Namaskarams, pranams to all the viewers of the InSync Instagram Live. Today we have a stalwart and a child prodigy, so to say, and somebody who took Carnatic music far and wide at a very young age, and he was always willing to try out new out of the box experiments and made a great success of what he did with one Shashank Subramanyam. May I invite him to join the chat? Namaskaram, Shashank ji. How are you?
Namaskar, sir. How are you?
Absolutely fine. In fact, I see that Mandolin Rajesh has also joined. My namaskarams to all the musicians and the Rasikas of InSync Instagram Live. And today we are indeed happy that we have a young prodigy to talk of a lot of important things about Carnatic music, and that is Shashank Subramanyam. Shashank ji, for a long time we have been looking forward to this chat with you. And let me warn you that this is not a very conservative Carnatic chat. This is going to be filled with fun, filled with mischief, and the idea is to understand the persona, not so much the music, because you are already known as a leading flute player of Carnatic music, and of course trying out a lot of experiments. But the idea is to get you out of that comfort box and tag you out. So that is going to be mischief. So let me pre-warn you.
No
now, my
problem.
first question.
Bring it on.
My first question is going to be your childhood. How mischievous you were? Were you always found doing pranks? Were you ever admonished? Were you ever beaten up? So how did it all happen? Tell me a little about that.
Good morning to all the viewers, and it's such a pleasure. Hello, Rajesh ji. Nice that you could join in. Childhood, well, I believe, mischievous, but most of my music, time got spent doing music, and completely under the watch of my dad, who was behind me for several hours in a day. So there was not so much room for a lot of mischief, I think. Just 1 minute, sir, if you don't mind. Just 1 minute, yeah.
Oh, please.
So, I don't think there was so much room for mischief, but yes, in my own little ways, perhaps I was quite mischievous, yeah.
Well, I must tell you this, when I was interviewing Unni Krishnan ji, he was mentioning about, playing cricket and, breaking a few glass panes and, always being warned by the neighbors not to do it. And, all these things, it happens in everybody's life.
It has happened with me as well. Though it was much less than perhaps my peers who had more time to play or, spend on other types of activities. So what happened was I started performing when I was 6, which is now about 38 years ago. So when I started performing, the pressures of performance, practice, following a routine, and amidst all this school and other activities, took kind of precedence over a lot of play time. So, yes, indeed, I used to bike a lot and play a lot with friends too. And I've had my share of issues, but then I think music took most of my time.
No, but you mentioned about mounting a platform at the age of 6.
Yeah.
Which means that you must have started actually playing serious music from a very, very young age. So that by 6, if you have to take on to the platform. Now, as a child, one would not like to do something very serious at that age. No fault of the child, but the child is meant to actually enjoy the life round. So when you are taken to music in a serious manner, I want you to tell me whether it was your father, your mother, or who actually inspired you to make it happen. And did you ever feel that am I being pulled out from my childhood, from my normal childhood routine, and I'm asked to do something else? And do you feel anytime negative or positive about it?
You see, I was exposed to my father playing the flute at home all the time. So I believe my father took me to a wedding celebrations where I was lost for a few hours, and then they found me next to the stage where these Nadaswaram artists were performing
Oh.
as part of the wedding celebrations. So I was refusing to come from there. That's what my father tells me when I was 9 months old. So I think he noticed that I had a keen interest in music and started teaching me word by word. I mean, he would play some scales. It is on record in Karnataka government scholarship panel recordings that at my 2.5, I could identify all the 72 Melakarta ragas. And Dr.
Oh.
Doreswamy Iyengar, the great Veena legend, interviewed me on that occasion, and I was awarded a scholarship. I think at my 4 or 5 years of age, which was meant for 14 or 15 years of age. So all these are on record, and but when I say get on stage at 6, yes, I would have played some compositions, some ragas, but my training went on for a long, very long time. Even though I was performing, I was getting on stage, I was coming off stage, and again going through training every single day for several hours a day, and under many vocal gurus. So I at that time I was studying with Palghat KV Narayan Swami sir for until my 10 years of age. I studied under him. So, and my father used to teach me, and for a very little while, R.K. Srikantan sir was teaching. So, I don't have so much memories from all this. Although I do remember my first performance when I was 6 years old, and subsequently, I used to travel to Chennai from Bangalore every week for my lessons with KVN sir. And during that time, I used to play here and there, and uh, you know, for some occasions. But my big time opportunities came when I was 11 years old, when Karakudimani sir presented me for the first time through his organization Shrutilaya in Shastri Hall of Chennai on the 20th of December 1990, where I was accompanied by all the legends, T. Rukmini, Velu Rambhadran sir, and Viku Vinayakram sir. So that was a blessed moment, and in the audience were so many legends, including the great M.S. Gopalakrishnan sir. And so I had a good beginning in Chennai. And then later, of course, everybody knows about the January 1 Music Academy concert. So I would say, though I got on stage at 6, my training never stopped. It was a continuous process, and it even goes on even today. I mean, I would say we are continuously training ourselves for one or the other things.
Before I come to actual performance level experiences and anecdotes, you mentioned about your father being your father, where you listen to him constantly even in the house itself, and then you mentioned about witnessing Nadaswaram kacheris wherever, and you got hooked on to the Nadaswaram. But as an instrument, flute and Nadaswaram, actually flute is a very subtle, soft instrument, whereas Nadaswaram was a Gambiram, with a very heavy kind of. But all said and done, the musicology is more or less the same. The raga rendering, the pattern, the way you do the
Uh,
level, the alap.
no, although you would say that Nadaswaram tradition. See, first of all, this incident is only pertaining to my identifying my interest in music. That was when I was 9 months old. I've had nothing to do with Nadaswaram Vidwans in my life, though I've admired, all the wonderful Nadaswaram players. They're absolutely phenomenal. Nadaswaram and the way they pursue music is quite different from the mainstream Carnatic music. Though everything is
Yes.
Carnatic music, Nadaswaram, the very
Yes.
way they play one phrase after the other, chained together, is extremely hard. And some of them, have mastered the art of circular breathing. So I think that aids their the whole tradition is so different. You see, they have a rhythm even for a
On that circular breathing, because that's very important for us to bring out the nuances. So, what do you mean by circular breathing?
yeah. Circular breathing is a technique that many Nadaswaram players and also in the West, many saxophone players and didgeridoo players are all quite adept at that technique. That is, you simultaneously breathe through your nose and fill up your lungs. And
Okay.
as you blow it out, you kind of create a sac here with the air still being there. It takes
So there is a storage point constantly being refilled with your breathing through the nose.
yeah, breathing through the nose, and so there is never a break taken usually for taking in a breath.
Uh huh.
But
Uh huh.
that is much more, effective in a instrument which takes in all the air, unlike a flute. Though there are some flute players, even in India, who have tried to kind of master that and have, to some extent, they have mastered it. But then it is more effective with an instrument that completely takes all the air, more the reed instruments like saxophone. So there's no loss of air in the process. But in flute, there's quite a loss of air, and that's how the instrument works. So, but Nadaswaram has even other traditions. Like they're one of the few which are accompanied more or less like a Vilambit process in Hindustani music. They are accompanied even in their alapanas or alap with a kind of a rhythm. So there's a rhythm to even the alapana, which is not quite prevalent in other traditions, whether it be vocal, violin, or flute. So I know, beyond a point, Carnatic music is a language, and every musician kind of adopts things that are convenient, though they sound similar and some phrases are similar. But over a point of time, you would notice that there's quite a lot of difference. Though much of the instruments try to correspond as much possible to the Gaiki style in music.
I want to step back and spend a little more time on the blowing techniques because it's very, very important. So in Carnatic music, you have Nadaswaram, which is very heavy blowing. I mean, the volume of air which you need to blow into the instrument, it's quite substantial as compared to, say, flute. And so is, say, saxophone.
It's pretty relative. It's pretty relative. I don't think... if you ask an Nadaswaram player, they will say they are used to it, and for them nothing seems amiss. When you say,
I meant in terms of the technicalities. Say, for example, Shanai, which is very, very popular in the Hindustani part. In Shanai, also relatively, it is less blowing need. So,
techniques. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, the techniques are similar, though maybe the pipe length of the pipe kind of matters in terms of how the air travels and how much more air one needs. I mean, although I agree with what you say, but beyond a point for a very trained person, this calculation of how much air and whether it is more taxing or less taxing doesn't play much.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But since I also need to address some musicological issues,
sure.
Because I also represent the Indian Musicological Society, which is in the business of publishing, journals which are read all over the world for doctoral theses and various other things. So I thought it was a little more important for this blowing techniques. And an expert like you, a prodigy like you, who has been trained from such a young age to master this, and especially the one you just mentioned about the continuous breathing.
Yes,
that's a technique which is very important for any blowing instrument, for that matter, to maintain the continuity, to maintain the Vilambit phrase, Vilambit melodic phrase. It's very important to have the right breathing techniques. So the youngsters who are listening to all this, Shashankji, would need the directions and advices from a stalwart like you, because they would like to understand this in a little more elaborate sense rather than reading an article. So that is why
Yeah,
I
yeah, no, no,
wanted
no.
you to.
It's absolutely pertinent. Your question and yeah, what you said was absolutely right. But let me also tell you that all this over a period of time becomes very secondary to you in nature.
Right,
So
right,
these are very particular to the artist who is pursuing that instrument. Say, for instance,
right.
even with flute playing, a lot of flute players who have seen me play are are sometimes breathless because they think, "Oh my God, what amount of air you have!" But for me, as a performer, I don't think I even think about it for a second that I need to have so much breath, and so it becomes a part of you. And
Right.
also, this is something that has to be experienced by the individual who is pursuing that instrument, and every person develops his own ways and rhythm of how he gets his lungs to
Yeah.
work, or how the angle of how he blows into the instrument. These are very unique to every performer.
No, the reason I wanted to have this is, we need to demystify the biggest thing in Indian classical music is while it's so beautiful to listen to, but some of these techniques are not explained elaborately, so people are a
Absolutely.
little lost. Yeah. So I think the one purpose of this chat show is to demystify our music and make it easier to the youngsters to understand some of this. While for a established performer, like you said, it is a secondary thing. I mean, it is just happening in the back office.
Yes.
But for somebody who
Yeah.
starts, for example, when we were talking to Jaideep Mevundiji, he mentioned about the Omkara sadhana. Every day to make them, have that level of control on breathing, they
Right.
do Omkara sadhana. So, like that at the formative stage, for any player, for any person who is wanting to take to this art, they need to understand these basic fundamental requirements so that they master it. And then, as they grow into a performer, these things, pale into insignificance. But by the
Yeah,
time you have
but
mastered,
this is what I said even yesterday in an interview. Yes,
yes,
absolutely, I agree with you that Indian music is, I mean, sometimes blown too much larger than life kind of an image. Every music is achievable, and Indian music is equally achievable by everyone. It just needs
exactly.
proper guidance and some attention to it, but it is not like an absolute hill that you are climbing that is impossible to climb. So it
Right.
is definitely possible, and the more young you are when you get into this art, you will climb it much easily. That's what I have realized in me because over a period of time, if a starter, if somebody begins to perform at their age of 20s and they have a far more difficult challenge task on hand compared to somebody who has started very young and has just gotten into the groove early on. So
Right.
it becomes easy. But yes, I think this is what I said even in the interview that with Darbar yesterday, that
Yeah.
gurus have to demystify music and not make it a very huge deal that somebody is getting into, because it scares
Yes.
away a student unnecessarily.
True, true. In
Yeah.
fact, we were talking to Rajesh ji
Okay.
just last week, and some of you like Mandolin Srinivas, Shashank, I think they were pre-filled with talent. That's why at such a young age they could come out and make a very very important mark in the concert platform. Imagine an 11-year-old performer performing on the stage, and all the stalwarts seated alongside the front row, and they are enjoying their concert. It doesn't happen normally, so it is a very unusual happening. So we need to acknowledge that aspect as well.
Yes, I would certainly say it's a gift, but that gift lies in so many individuals in every given population, for sure. And the credit actually goes to the gurus who identify that talent and mold them
Yeah,
very
yeah,
diligently. It's the history has also seen many such wonderful talents who have begun such so well in in their early years and then gone on to not contribute really too much. This has
True.
happened. So I think it is a constant process where the talent is picked, trained properly, not overdone, and at the same time allowed to blossom. However, one's talent
Organically.
organically.
Yeah.
That is the right word. Absolutely. That's what my father did. There used to be concerts where I would play something really crappy, I would say today in hindsight. Um,
Uh-huh.
but he would say, well, that was good for your age. You should develop like that. If I told
Yeah.
you, if my gurus curtailed me from my imagination that day, perhaps it would not have led
The
to
creativity will get lost.
get
Yeah.
lost. Yeah. I think in definitely in hindsight, the form always was the same. I mean, there was always a shape to my art or my with my tone. So all these were the same identity is of every artist who have started young and have had prodigal talent, but they've all toiled extremely hard as they got into their teen years and as they faced the world. It has been an equally challenging process, both for the gurus, both for the artists themselves. So.
Pardon me, but seldom do we get an opportunity to talk at length with prodigies. So I want to spend a little more time on that. You mentioned about at the age of 3.5 years you could identify all the Melakarta ragas, 72 Melakarta
Two and a
ragas.
half, yeah.
The concept of Melakarta is unknown to the Hindustani music because they have a completely different system of the thought process where there are 10 thoughts and then from there the ragas emerge.
It's more
So
or
as
less
a
the same. Well, I'm sure you know Melakarta Ragas very well. For the audience, Melakarta Ragas are the 72 basic
yeah,
ragas, which have seven notes in the ascending order and the same seven notes in the descending order. Now, when you say seven notes, there are three varieties of Rishabhams, three varieties of Gandharams, two varieties of Madhyamams and Mas, and three varieties of the three varieties of Ni, and then the Sa. Well, when we say three varieties of Rishabham and three varieties of Gandharam, there are notes that overlap between these notes. For instance, a Re 2 can be a Ga 1, Re 3 can be a Ga 2. So, like this, there are notes that do overlap, but the typical rule in a 72 Melakarta Ragas is that the preceding note or the note above the note ahead are different in their note values. It could be half a note higher or a half a note lower or a full note higher. So that's how with permutation and combination we reach 72 ragas. But let me also demystify this. A lot of them have said 72 ragas is the world, but I don't prescribe to that idea so much because a lot of the 72 Melakarta ragas are very, very common to each other and don't really mean there are 72 individuals, though, because there are so much similarities, like a half a note different in a raga doesn't bring about a world of a change. So, and many times the derivatives of these ragas have outdone the parents. Like for instance, Sri Kamboji is a beautiful raga,
yeah.
but Kamboji is more emotionally moving compared to maybe. That's my opinion. I don't know if others subscribe to this, but for instance, Dharmavati is a beautiful raga, but its offspring like Ranjini is equally beautiful raga, or a
No, it
Chakravakta.
is. Yeah, you mentioned about the children outgrowing the parents. That's a process of evolution. After all, somebody brings it to a certain level. For example, at the age of 3.5, if you as a child could identify the 72 Mulakata ragas, somebody else took the efforts to ensure that that happened in you, that got kind of put into you. So that effort to enrich you is a very, very crucial step for a prodigy
Absolutely.
to blossom.
Absolutely, absolutely. But You see, this in a life of a performer or a career of a performer, one has to be aware of a certain amount of musicology. So
Yeah.
now this topic of 72 Melakartaragas typically is more important when you speak about it individually and a lot of things about it in a musicology, perspective, musicologist perspective. But when it comes to a performer, um,
It's completely. Yeah.
it differs a lot, and it differs even further when you are a vocalist or a flute player or a violinist, or what your instrument provide in terms of facility, and not everything suits everything.
True. True.
Yeah.
So from the age of 11 you started being presented on large stages, large platforms. You mentioned about Music Academy. Uh, as a very young person, have you kind of was there a sense of fear in you that all the big names are sitting in the front and they're all very knowledgeable? So what am I going to do? Did you have that sense of fear, or was it what the hell? I'm doing what I want to do. So how was your feel?
No wonder. No, I mean, no wonder it's a dream opportunity for any musician, and it was one opportunity that brought a lot of hate among, I mean, on me and myself as a musician from many of my fellow musicians who didn't have such a rise to a slot like in Music Academy Senior, because a slot which they had slogged for 10, 15, 20 years to get there. So that's one downside of that. But, I think I was kind of cool about it because I was sure of what I was doing at that point. There was, of course, a lot of practice for it because this came as a surprise. Say on December 20th of 1990, I played my first concert in Chennai, officially in a public concert. And then later I played at Krishnagant Sabha a few days later. But on 21st of December, when I was just attending somebody's concert in Music Academy, the president, Sri T.T. Vasu, sir, he called us aside and said, "Can you play on January 1 evening?" And my father was taken aback because the same year I was refused even a 12 o'clock slot when I had applied for it,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
saying I was too young for it.
Uh-huh.
So, but then later we only had about 9 days to prepare for it because this slot came by. Let me make. I've tried to tell Music Academy to amend their website to reflect my concert, but they still have the original concert that was planned, and they have still not taken.
This things happen.
No, these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
happen, but I have to correct the history. I have to tell you, this concert was actually of L. Subramanyam, Shankar, and Vaidyanathan's trio with the
Uh-huh.
great Umayalapuram Shivaraman sir on the Mridangam.
Uh-huh.
But it so happened on 19th or 20th of December, L. Subramanyam sir's father passed away. And
Oh,
therefore, he cancelled the concert, and then it landed on my lap. So that is
okay.
how it happened. So then
Oh.
those intervening 9 days was quite a stress, mainly for my father,
But
because
who accompanied Mridangam?
thankfully Melapuram Shivaraman sir said, "No problem, I will play for the boy, I will encourage him." And
Yeah.
he later on mentioned that he had phone calls from literally every corner of the town asking him not to
Uh-huh.
do this, that he would set a bad
Uh-huh.
precedent. But I
Uh,
really thank him for his support that day. He said, "No, I am going to. I have seen the boy. He's very good. He's playing well, and I'm going to support him." So I really am grateful to.
very, very close connect with Umayalapuram Shivaramanji because the Marathi Urban Connector, he wanted to accompany me whenever I performed in Chennai. And this attitude of him, of always wanting to support something that is new, emerging, evolving, despite him being a fairly known, established, popular stalwart on Mridangam. And this attitude is something which I would suggest all the musicians should imbibe, so that the new talent which is coming to the platform level are encouraged, motivated, and inspired. So I think we need to have more such Umayyapuram Shivaramans ji in our midst.
We do, and it's always a very difficult process to find walk that fine line, whether you will support an youngster who deserves, whether he'll carry on to become what you want him to become. At the same time,
Yes.
how you deal with your senior, the other senior contemporary artists who might have
Right.
objection to what you do. This is a very fine
True.
balance, which main artists like me also go through. At times, I have very wonderful contemporaries or even senior accompaniments who are working with me. At the same time, if I take their disciples, who are very talented and encourage them, it brings in a lot of
I, I,
uncomfortable equations. So this is a very constant process, and in fact, Shivaraman sir was very generous in that he had nothing to lose because he was a very tall legend even then, and so well, he did. And in the audience, there was Shaman Gudi sir, M.S. Subbalakshmi ji, and Sadashivan sir, T.N. Seshagopal, and I mean, the hall was full. There were corridors were full. They had CCTVs, and President R. Venkatraman sir was there with Janaki Venkatraman ji. And,
you mentioned about, yeah, you mentioned about Karekudi Mani sir presenting you on Shukla. Can you give a little more detail on that anecdote, how it happened and all that?
well, Karakadimani sir used to visit. See, we are. Let me also tell you a little background of my family. So we are Tirunelveli. Ayers from Tirunelveli, but born and brought up in Karnataka for a while. My father was a professor at Bangalore's Agricultural University, and but his total passion and interest was only in music. So he would take me to all these artists. He would find out when these legends would come, and he would somehow make a connection with them. And all these legends, though they were huge legends, they were always very approachable. They would always be very encouraging. So Mani sir used to often visit for concerts in Bangalore. So my father used to take me to these people when I was, either when we came to Chennai for lessons with KVN sir, and or in Bangalore when these, people came to perform. And during in the last 2 years before these concerts, we had moved to Chennai for good, and so my father would organize some 150 concerts during the time he had organized so that at home. So I would get a concert practice with a mridangam and a violin. He would introduce various schools of laya, artists like mridangam artists, so that I would have a variety in encountering or countering how to understand how their rhythm patterns would work and how these things would work. And so in the course of the time, Karakrimani sir saw that I was doing well and offered to present me through his sabha. That's
So
how.
Karekudi Mani is another stalwart on Mridangam, and now I slowly want to shift to the international angle. But before I do that, I want to tell the listeners that Carnatic music, by and large, is an extremely conservative, very closely held arm of music. And there are very few people who face a challenge or want to take it out to a completely new audience, to a very different kind of a perspective. And if there is one young person who not only had the confidence but who did it successfully to take the Carnatic music to a world audience, it was Master Shashank, as I used to know you when you were young, but I can't call you Master Shashank anymore. But those were the heady days when, as a young performer, with so much of confidence, brimming with musicality in you, you would kind of put the entire audience into some kind of a mesmerized situation. Tell me more about Shashank, how it started and how did you do that?
Um, Let me address that one comment that you made about Carnatic music being conservative. Yes, indeed, only because it is conservative that it retained its um, form or shape or flavor because it was
Core
not,
values.
and it's still considered to be a musical form that is devoid of any influence but I think the audience at large in the world were a bit unfair to Carnatic music because for whatever reason Hindustani music was more popular and they seldom gave an opportunity to a South Indian musician to and gave him the opportunity to present him or her, whatever music that he or she was a master at. So this has to be said because it was an extremely unfair competition between Hindustani music and Carnatic musicians. It was a lopsided, opportunity-wise, totally lopsided. And even today, that continues, unfortunately, though the situation is much better. Yes, Carnatic music.
Shashank, I must respond to this because I run a television channel extensively seen by the Hindustani stream. So
I,
please allow me a little later.
I will. I will. I'm not finished.
Yeah.
There were many artists who it became. So I have to also tell you a little bit before because we also spoke about Nadaswaram. See, Nadaswaram.
Yeah.
If you refer to Nadaswaram music, it was nothing but very similar to Hindustani music in sense of its presentation, the expanse of how they did alaps, not too song oriented and very improvisation oriented. This is what Hindustani music is about. And Carnatic music was very similar, though the flavor of the music was totally different. This aspect did not get carried on because the vocalists predominantly brought in a format and chose to, cater to the audience and well, it became a successful format because the audience wanted more variety in a concert, and so that brought about a scheme of things where people considered Carnatic music either. I have even heard somebody say it's a folk music or it's a bhajan session or it is unfortunately not that. And and also adding to this mess was a lot of musicians who chose not to do extensive all-ups and chose to more present even even for a North Indian audience. And this made Carnatic music even more distant to a North Indian audience. But I would say I was not just one of them. I mean, not the only one, but I had so many great artists from the South did take Carnatic music to the North. Mandolin Srinivas was one of them. Ravi Kiran was one of them. And before that, Professor T.N. Krishnan, Lal Gudi sir, a lot of the MSG sir was a classic example of how he beautifully brought Carnatic music to the North and made it extremely popular. And he also adopted so many beautiful elements from Hindustani music and so on. So that shift happened because in my personal case, because I was also very much a big fan of Hindustani music, and the more and more difficulties I faced wherever I performed. See, for instance, I used to go. I've played more than 1,000 concerts for Speak Mackey in all over the country, whether it be Rajasthan, Bihar. I've been to Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu, corners of Punjab. So everywhere I used to find this question very intriguing as to with Carnatic music, especially when we had Ghatam in our concerts, it would almost relate to them more in terms of a folk concert because they used to see Ghatam more in Rajasthani folk music, somebody playing on a matka, for instance. All this they never considered as a classical, also as a classical, music, because all these instruments, so I faced a lot of difficulties, and so I kind of modified my presentation without diluting the flavor of the music. So when I would play a Carnatic music concert in the north, I would begin with a serious raga and just play a ragam tanam pallavi and leave. People would have a better impression about that rather than me starting with a small song, then playing a mid-sized composition, and then playing by the time which they would be bored and totally directionless. And then another way I really took Carnatic music more and more to the north in my own ways was doing very good jugalbandis with a lot of wonderful maestros of the north who were also very open to doing jugalbandis and would and for the kind of here I should mention that Pandit Jasraj, whom I learned a lot of Hindustani music for nearly 15 years, was extremely instrumental because he opened up the world of North Indian music for me and demystified it so beautifully without even a single day telling me what I should change in my music. So this brought in a way I could converse very easily with North Indian musicians, the North Indian audience. So I would design my own Ragam Tanam Pallavis where I would play Vilambit, Madhilai and Dhrut. Three different Pallavis in three different talas and same raga. So this kind of opened up possibilities for a North Indian music lover to say, oh, this is also possible in South Indian music. So why not? So, I mean, these are some things I did personally for myself, you know. Others had other mechanisms, of course, yeah.
Well, I must, you covered a wide spectrum of issues pertaining to classical music in India. Just to respond, because I'm responsible media and I run a television channel, which is possibly the only channel promoting classical music,
Absolutely.
seen and viewed by both Hindustani, Carnatic, the Ghazal component, fusion, the Sufi, and what have you. So I think one is the music, and both Hindustani and Carnatic music have their own core values, which are beautiful, and each one of them can coexist without having to compromise or to meet each other. But yet, there must be a lot of handshakes, so the beauty of each music is seen by the other side of the country. So that you did very successfully. But that would obviously mean that Carnatic music has a tremendous amount of intrinsic strength, which has so far not been so popularized in the other places, not necessarily in North India, even outside the country. So there are pockets where music is seen and viewed. So today you may find higher dose of Hindustani than the Carnatic music. That is possibly because the numbers are different. For example,
yes. The demographic of the country adds to the
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think it means any way to measure the quality of music. Certainly not. It is just because there is a number which is bigger. So that is one thing that I would like to say as a media person. Second is, Spickbacker did an excellent role in terms of demystifying classical music and by presenting artists like you who are fairly communicative. You know, one is to play excellent music. Second is to speak about excellent music. So these are two different things. So my own assessment, please don't mistake me, my own assessment is there are limited number of people in the Carnatic fraternity to do this so well as much as the Hindustani fraternity. In Hindustani fraternity, people can also communicate in a language which is understood by them. Again, this does not mean that is better or this is better. It is because the languages are different. True. So as a means of communication, you are not able to take across your point of view. Now, for the advantage of Shashank was he speaks excellent English. So, and also a little bit of Hindi here and there. So, you are able to communicate it so well, and you are an extremely popular youngster in both the streets. But I would come back to say that both are beautiful, both are fantastic in their evolution process, and while they exist in their space, but there needs to be more handshake so that so this concept of Jugalbandi, where each one is given a certain space where you are able to present something different. For example, you mentioned about an elaborate Ragam Tanam Pallavi and the concert ended. Now, this cannot happen in Chennai. In Chennai, the way people enjoy, the Rasikas, the perspective, the attitudes of Rasikas are very different. Compared to, somewhere, say, in Bombay. In Bombay, you can get away with playing just 1.5 hours, just one rag in different formats and end the concert. But that's a style here, but there the style is different. So each one has its own merits, and maybe one of these days we will have a cross section of performers and organizers and the media to have all this exchange and come to some kind of a clarity. But as a performer, Shashank has taken Carnatic music to far and wide and has tried out new formats like you yourself just said that you could play an elaborate and you could play three talas, the Vilambe, the Madhyalay and the Drit in the same this thing which is again not done in Carnatic music normally. In Carnatic music when you take a number, well you maintain one particular speed, whereas in Hindustani music it's very common. So you took that style. So you did a lot of permutation combination to establish yourself as a performer. So
Yes.
I'm extremely grateful. Yeah. So,
Thank you, thank you. You really summed it up very well. But I should also tell you that a lot of Carnatic musicians, for whatever conservative background they came from, never invested their energies in taking the music far and wide. See, sometimes I would get a call from Europe to say, "Can you come and play? This is the budget." I would not even get a few $100 even, but I would say, is that an opportunity where at least 500 people will listen? I will come and present.
yes.
So I would
Good.
fly in the morning, perform in the evening or afternoon, and fly back in the night. So there were moments, so many hundreds of moments like that. And now, let me also put it this way. There is all this, unfortunately, a lot of divide between whether an artist should call an organizer, whether an artist should seek out for an opportunity, and whether he should solicit an opportunity. So this unfortunately has killed a lot of great musicians, or has come in the way of a lot of great musicians sharing their music. For me, I see the end kind of justifies the means for me. Because today I would call an organizer and say, look, I would like to take Carnatic music. I would like to present it in your festival. Why don't you give me an opportunity? And he would ask me, oh, nobody calls me like this. I said, I'm an artist. You are an organizer. I seek out an opportunity. You also seek out an artist. Let us say it's like a business, anyways. So, unfortunately, we have to adopt a lot of things, whether it may be quiet ways of doing it. And I would call so many influential people in town and say, Carnatic music deserves better. You should make an effort. And there are a lot of rich people in a town that make it happen. So I've adopted too many ways, and even today I was kind of thinking of telling some people as to why opportunities that originate from the government of India don't often reach South Indians. So a VIP of a world coming to Delhi, some sarod, some sitar only gets to play for the, and they will put a picture of themselves with Prime Minister Modi, or why not a South Indian do that? So I was actually planning to speak to some people today about that, because you see, this country is so big. The folk arts of a certain region get terrific prominence, whether it be Rajasthan or Northeast. Today, in every power corridor, every opportunity, they're the first ones to be looked up. Whereas there are hundreds of folk arts in South India. So there is I mean, at many levels, people have to engage and fight for their opportunities. I have done this in multiple ways. Sometimes even belittling myself, I will go and tell a person, I've not played in your organization for 10 years. Why haven't you called me? Don't you like my music? And they would sit up and say, no, it's nothing like that. It's just sheerly out of sight, out of mind situation. So let me invite you. And see, for the audience who listen, they will not really care about why you didn't come or how you came there. What matters to them is that they heard you. So this is, and in fact, I've even called so many in Bombay, so many Hindustani Sabhas in Bombay, and said, look, you ought to present Carnatic music the same way as South Indians present Carnatic music in every city. So it has been a struggle, but I mean, it is kind of getting better and better. And your channel, I should say, has contributed quite something towards that direction, in that direction.
I'm happy you said it, Shashank. I must now react because I also happen to be the chairman of Music Forum, which is the All India Body for Classical Music. I also headed the Fine Arts Society for almost 35 years. I was the chairman till recently. So I have worn these different hats, and let me tell you, uh, Carnatic music is highly respected, highly revered, but it is this lack of connect, one-to-one connect with the Carnatic performers that sometimes does not get us the right opportunity. I have always advocated in wherever I have addressed various audience in seminars or what have you. I've always advocated that Carnatic music needs a better space, needs a higher level of engagement with the mainstream music. And it has started happening. Let me assure you that it has started happening. And we did something called Uttar Dakshin in four cities, which was very nicely attended, where we presented the viewpoints of the melody, the percussion, and the vocal of both Hindustani and Carnatic. And six stalwarts would sit in a common platform curated by me and Pandit Arvind Parikh, and we presented this, and we brought in a lot of brotherhood between the two streams. But yes, I would definitely accept your viewpoint that Hindustani gets better opportunity because Hindustani music is very, pardon me for saying it, it's very instrumental centric. Whereas Carnatic music by and large is more vocal centric. So there are several aspects as to why. And when you present a concert, for example, there is a dignitary coming from an overseas world, you would rather present an instrument because there is no language barrier. So there are certain issues which, as Carnatic performers, we need to address and we need to come about. And I'm sure a person.
Let me add one
Yeah.
more thing. This may be a bit harsh on my fellow artists. Carnatic musicians also have to gear up largely to a world platform. See, for instance, there are a lot of violinists who are day in, day out performing only with vocalists. And one day, when they are presented with an opportunity to present a solo violin recital, they
You said it.
they may
You
or
said
may not
it.
be geared up for the occasion. Similarly,
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
similarly, it goes with Laya. We have such great Laya exponents, mind-boggling Laya exponents, whether it be Tawil players, Gadam players, Mridangam players, Kanjira players. But there, the system has not provided them an opportunity to gear up to the occasion. For instance, all the sabhas in South Indian fraternity rarely present a Talavadya Kacheri or a solo of a Mridangam, just similarly to a tabla solo in North Indian music series. Here we have a rich talent and an art, but we have not been given opportunity, even in our own fraternity, often to blossom and be capable enough of presenting something to the bigger stage. And so this is what happens. So there is problem with both ways. And the other problem I often hear from my fellow counterparts in Hindustani music is that many of the South Indian musicians are so strong in everything, and the Jugalbandi is a great possibility, but often the problem of how to integrate compositions and the formats become a big issue. So with me, this is one thing I eliminated from myself. I never had the issue of, oh, you want to play my composition or I want to play your composition. I didn't have an idea. So I would go to some great legend who will say, is it okay if you play my bandish? I said, okay, no problem. I'll play it in my style, no problem. You just tell me the bandish, I will play. You don't have to play a Tyagaraja composition for my sake. If you like to do it, do it. But so this kind of made it easy for the conversation to take place.
Yes, yes, yes.
So often somebody would say, "Oh, Shashankji, I can't get the gamaks right or right in your language." Sir, you don't have to do that. I will play. We will fix up a common line. You play your bandish. I will play my bandish, and then we'll amalgamate. So I mean, it is both ways, as you said. It is both ways, as you said. Even the art and artists have to get up. We have everything
Yes.
in Carnatic music. Carnatic music is a perfectly developed system of music. Just the presentational aspects may need some change in order to appeal to the. So one more thing in that direction I have done is often when I played shorter flutes, which is a tradition in Carnatic music. worldwide, they would associate flute to some popular Hindustani flute players often, and especially being Hariji, who had this, who really popularized the flute in every corner of this world. So then I always heard comments from people like, if you could play the same thing in bass flute, it would reach better. And Pandit Jasrajji would often, when I was accompanying him, he would say, "Can't you play a lower flute? Can't you play a lower flute?" We had a lot of issues because of fingering, patterns or techniques. So I overcame all that. We designed newer flutes. So today I play my main concerts in the bass flute, which have a same finger span as a shorter flute. So I have really done what it takes, and I'm ready to do more in order for the music at large to become popular. And if and so many of my colleagues have also done the same thing. So many, and L. Subramanyam sir, Mandolin Srinivas, Kumaresh Ganesh, so many have taken this art far and wide and have the similar intentions as mine. So.
I must tell that the situation has considerably improved in the last one decade. The handshake between Hindustani, Carnatic, exchange of ideas, give and take, be more flexible in your approach. Like you said, if it's too much to expect a North Indian performer to know a Tyagaraja Kriti and play it. It's just not feasible. So you lose that opportunity if you insist on that.
Yes.
So this is something, and I must tell you this small point that I was addressing a seminar somewhere, and they said your Carnatic music is very conservative. I said no, it is not conservative. Violin, which is the main accompaniment, has not originated in Carnatic music. It was a Western instrument that we took here. Mridangam, which is played, is actually taken from the Maharashtra Varkari Sampradaya and then converted and made into Mridangam. The Morsing is actually a Rajasthani folk artist, and similar is same as the case with Ghatam. So we have brought out the beauty of all these different aspects of music, combined it and presented it on a stage with a very, very strong, highly structured, the tremendous core value of Carnatic music. So it is not that the system is conservative, it is our mind which is conservative. And the mind can always change.
And also the audience has to play a little part in it. I somehow believe that they can do much more to integrate the two. Because, for instance, Carnatic audience, when they listen to a Hindustani artist, they're prepared to listen to that 1 hour of one raga, and they go very satisfied. But the same thing, they're quite punitive when a Carnatic musician does the same thing. So, as a matter of fact, as a result of that, a lot of Carnatic musicians may have lost the ability to dwell upon elaborate alapanas, elaborate improvisations, because they're not required to do so anymore. You know what I mean? So if I'm asked to, I get called sometimes for a 1 hour, one raga concert. And one should be capable of doing that.
Yeah. In fact, I must
lose that capability because we are not doing that through the year. Right?
That's right.
You have lost the orientation.
I must compliment you because you truly converted this chat into a mischievous chat, because a lot of issues which come out of all this chat that we are having today.
It is very akin to the T20, 1 days and a test format. It's the same thing. If you want to compare to a game, this is also a game. Correct. 1 day you play a game in a nutshell, and 1 day you play it on an elaborate canvas. I mean, it's like painting a picture in a small. So, yeah.
This brings me to.
I mean, no offense to any of my colleagues. Everybody has put in a great deal of time. Some have had the opportunity, some have not. I think we should all go out of the way to get our opportunities. There's nothing wrong in seeking opportunities, because we practice day in, day out. We produce a product and we have to sell it.
Well, that brings me, 1 hour is not adequate to speak to somebody who has so much of wisdom and knowledge on music, Shashank, but then we have to, but before I conclude, there is one aspect that I want to check with you. It's quite some time you brought out an album. So I'm looking forward to an album from you which would sound different, and InSync would like to premiere it.
Sure.
So how do you think it could be done?
I have many albums, even recently, which was extremely different. The language of music. During the pandemic times, I released two albums on meditation, just with beautiful, just long all ups. It's called meditation, silent breath. And there have been a couple of albums with philharmonic orchestras, like Uppertal Philharmonic Orchestra released the recent work called Soy Symphony. And I mean, I have had Middle Eastern albums, Carnatic music and Middle Eastern music album released last year. All of them are available on Spotify. But these days, unfortunately, because there's so much music, so much everything, and I mean, it's very hard to get the attention on these albums often, and one has to work so much and invest so much time and resources. It's very hard. But
I understand.
the history has many, and it's not that I've not released any albums, but I have released to date. I have about 81 albums. Predominantly classical. There's many jugalbandis and also many crossover albums. It's just that in India, people take a whole long time to warm up to these ideas and albums.
Well, that brings me to the last question. 3.5 years identifying Melakarta Ragas, 6 years presented on the stage, 11 years started getting presented in large Carnatic concerts, 44 years riding on the top of Indian classical music. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
To be honest, I often get a thought that I should first survive these 10 years in music, because today, I should sadly admit that the respect for artists, contributors have gone down, are diminishing by the day, because there's too much variety. The quality of is not really assessed on its true merits. So somebody coming to play flute in my place is good because there's a change in the phase. So this phase between 40 and the next 10 years is an extremely challenging one, where I'm having to work overtime to keep myself very musically alive, kicking, and it's an extremely challenging phase for every artist. I'm sure some would admit, some would not admit, but I'm being open. Yeah, sometimes I get ignored by even the most popular festivals I've played in all these years. They would suddenly not invite me to perform. So there are moments like that. So I would rather say next 10 years, if I survive, I have a hope of surviving another 10 years. So see, unfortunately, in music, there's no retirement. So people who are in their 70s and 80s, who more fit the role of a guru and a guiding figure in the field, continue to perform. So there's the ascent of younger generation always takes a bigger hit. So it's always a fight up. But I think it's interesting. That's how you keep your art on top and prove yourself that you are worth every opportunity that is given to you.
What do you think of the InSync channel as the only channel promoting this kind of music? What do you think can be done? How do you think it should evolve?
I'm not very good at the business, but I think InSync has done tremendously well. I really hope that you catch on to other, promoters like Airtel. Now, I really that's a wonderful thing to be on a mainstream network like that. But I really hope there are other networks that could feature the channel, and more sponsorships that could be brought on. And I hope the state also supports. Now, for instance, there's been talk of so many radio stations, radio programs being eliminated for classical music. So they took down the Amrita Varshini channel from AR Bangalore recently. So all this is not a very good thing. So the state should wake up and support channels like InSync because they're preserving the classical music, tradition. And really, I wish more corporates do it also. And also, one major thing outside of InSync that should also happen is to take classical music to smaller towns, like they have done in certain parts of Maharashtra, for instance. It's Maharashtra is one state I really appreciate because Kolhapur, Sholapur, Ahmedabad, Aurangabad, Nagpur, everywhere music happens. Whether large or small, I mean, that can be another thing. But unfortunately, if you take Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, not everywhere classical music travels to little towns. It's all the sponsorships get lost in these bigger towns where you perform a concert in 5 kilometer vicinity. There are 20 organizations. So this, like in sync, the mainstream Carnatic music or classical music also has to go to smaller towns on a regular basis, and more sponsorships should be invested in these. And InSync, of course, coming back to the thing, I really admire the channel, and I've heard a lot of concerts. It has to be promoted more largely. But of course, I'm sure it is a challenge with so much free music available on YouTube. Unfortunately, it's a challenge, right? I mean,
just to use this opportunity to say today, Shashank, with your blessings, today we are launching the European version of InSync. So on a
okay,
24/7 app, this is getting launched in London this weekend, and
okay.
then we are trying to attract other markets. But the journey has been very difficult for me to invest so much money into running a channel, and I've done it personally so far in my own to my own ability or what have you. And it's a few hundred crores that you need to make all this happen. To get the carriage, to get it on Airtel, to get it on. So we are. The journey is on. The journey is filled with challenges, but this journey we will never say die, and we'll keep going.
I absolutely wish for that, and I would also like to someday play more for InSync. But I would also like to tell all the millionaires and billionaires out there, I would humbly request them to invest more money into classical music. It's not always about how much footprint you have digitally, and I mean, that's meaningless after a while. The classical music is the identity of India. See, a lot of software engineers, doctors, and a lot of lawyers. I mean, they're all, of course, they're great in their own ways. But India gets identified predominantly for its art and food. So this one
Absolutely.
thing has to be recognized. Like one example before we go, I would like to say all over the world, Europe or US or Japan or Australia, wherever you go, you will see that the classical orchestras and musicians are employed by the state to keep their orchestra together. It is not financially viable to keep a 130, 150 member orchestra kicking through the year because it's impossible. But the state invests money in their opera houses and employs musicians on a 3 year, 5 year, or a permanent employment, which keeps them sustained very well at a very good standard, and they also present great music. So the classical music everywhere has the same challenge, really, to keep themselves afloat. But then I think it is important for the state to get involved, and maybe India has another challenge of a large population with too many art forms, and I mean, one of the countries which has two distinctly different classical forms of music itself. So it's a challenge. I don't know how long and when all
No,
this.
we will continue to live, we will continue to smile, we will continue to exist. But just for the sake of records, let me tell you that the excellent chat show that we had with Master Shashank or Vidwan Shashank today would be also available in addition to being live. It will also be available on the YouTube channel a little later.
Sure.
We are in the process of doing this Instagram live chat show with every lot of artists every Saturday. So Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, please look forward to this chat show. And with that, Shashank, it's my pleasure. Wishing you all the very best in life and
Thank
all the
you.
very best for both of your
Thank
excellent
you. And
listeners.
I do hope I have not offended any with my little outspoken words. So,
Even if you did, it is for the good of music.
yeah, I
So
have
let's
great
keep.
respect for all my artists, audience. This is a process of evolvement, and I do hope we are all in this game together and evolve. Better and better to get better and better. Yeah. Right. Thank you,
Thank you very
G.
much. It's a pleasure. Bye then.
Truly. Likewise. Yeah.